My name is Sonnon. I'm here from the States. What I'm going to share with you today is a short demonstration on circular strength training to give an idea of where this came about. When I was a child, I suffered a chronic joint disease called osteochondrosis, which means my connective tissue didn't adhere to my growth plates like normal people. So in order for me to keep up with the other kids, I had to develop alternative methods of movement. I had to break down movements into their little components in order to absorb them. It was a very slow process of learning, especially because I suffered some learning disabilities like dyslexia, which means if you tell me to go to the right, I'm going to go the opposite direction and fall off the stage. Putting movement together is an art form, but it was also made into a science, and that led me to the former Soviet Union. I ended up, it's a strange story how it came about, I'm not going to give you all the details, but I ended up in this huge think tank of Olympic coaches, national trainers, special forces, and their cosmonaut program. The Soviets were trying to develop a way of keeping their cosmonauts healthy in zero gravity. Without gravity, our body starts the process of death, because we need tension in order for health to be elicited. We need that stimulation of stress, good stress, not bad stress. They developed a joint mobility program based upon yoga as it traveled through their country about 1,000 years before. Some of their indigenous martial art movements, that was my background, and some of their folk dance. You'll notice that when I do some of the demonstrations, it'll look a little bit like Cossack dance. We won't be busting out with the hats, but it's a three-wing process. So the beginning of the demonstration is going to look very simple. That's my part, the remedial part. See, if you look at a joint, as soon as you add weight to the joint, if it hasn't been decompressed, if it hasn't been washed with synovial fluid, then you're going to cause further strain to that joint. You're actually going to overtrain it much more quickly. It becomes dry and brittle. So the joint mobility program, I'm going to give you a short version, and then we're going to move into the moving yoga called Prasara yoga. The final component is weighted bats, or weight swinging. This is the flagship of the circular strength training program. There are other pieces of equipment, but does anybody here still remember, it was about 100 years ago before they fell out of vogue, Indian clubs? They looked like big wooden bowling pins, and they were swung rather than lifted. And the purpose behind swinging weight is to cause traction so that the connective tissue pulls apart. And by pulling the connective tissue apart, it lays down fibers to keep the joint stable, rather than lifting on the joint, which can compress out the synovial fluid. So I'll give you a demonstration of club bell swinging. Shoulders are a synergy of 4 different joints. So if you want to think about the next exercise, think about it wringing out a washcloth. Scapular slide, roll, and lengthening. The purpose, once again, is to wring out that thick band of connective tissue between the shoulder girdle. This is a good prehab exercise directly before, say, a ground-based movement, so that the shoulder girdle is lubricated sufficiently in order to move through its full range of motion. As you move down into the thorax, we tend to think of the thorax like a cage, when it's actually a steel spring. The ribs are designed to open up like big French bay doors. So the basic range of motion, which most people should be able to do, but due to stress, we tend to lose. The laterals people are familiar with, but we tend to substitute the hips. Once we move into full range of motion, that allows us to have the mobility again, to actually gain a full breath. Because of the displaced center of mass, you don't need much weight in order to challenge the connective tissue. The muscle's only designed to hold the joints together. So we challenge those tissues. Classical swipe. These are the more traditional movements. And they can also be taken horizontally. Like you would see in more conventional med ball training. In order to target the core and to activate that large corset of muscle around your torso. So it tends to be a prehab and post-rehab program. Most people's connective tissue is in a state of decay already, but with those incremental movements, you may only start with being able to allow the shoulder girdle to open up once again. But that begins the process of being able to cast, connect the implement down to the core, and then the movement becomes slightly more sophisticated until you're doing actual combination routines with the tool.